name's Emma. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I'm Mark. Nice
Nice to meet you. So, are you happy to be recorded?
Oh, no problem at all. Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, you saw the sign. Love. You can't love animals and eat them.
Yes.
Do you agree with it? Do you disagree? Do you have any objections?
Well, I think I certainly disagree with it.
Yeah.
I mean, what I would firstly say is I respect veganism. I respect whatever they believe in, but I think that's a bit different to the question that you're putting across. It's more like a fundamentalist vegan view. I think this idea of you cannot like animals but eat them at the same time, because there are certain. Now, this is where it gets tricky to argue, because it is accepted that there are certain animals that you do eat and certain animals that you don't eat.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you feel that love means?
Well, I mean, in general, or?
Yeah, what does it mean to love?
To love, well, that's a big question in itself. I mean, if you're talking about loving an animal, I mean, I love my cat.
Yeah.
My cat is lovely. I mean, I wouldn't eat him.
Would you take a bolt gun to your cat's head and then slice its throat open to consume your cat's flesh?
Of course not, because he's a pet. The relationship
Yeah.
you have with a pet is...
Would you agree that wouldn't be a loving act to do?
No, absolutely not. But
So what's the difference between, say, a cat and a pig then?
well, it depends. Because, like I said, it's a relationship of keeping it as a pet rather than keeping it to be used as
Yeah.
meat to eat.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah,
Do you feel that those animals that we do consume for meat, do they have moral value?
what the animals have moral value.
Yeah, the animals that are kept in factory farms, like pigs, chickens, cows. Do you believe that they have any moral value whatsoever?
I certainly, where I will agree with this movement is that sometimes the way in which they're slaughtered and the way in which they're kept are cruel, and we do have to look at the rights in which they're slaughtered. However, to that degree and how you maintain them, yes, I think they do have moral value. But in terms of regarding them as sacred animals, I suppose bluntly, no.
Do you think that they need to have sacred value to be able to grant them enough moral consideration not to stab them?
Well, sorry, say the question again. I'm a bit hungover.
Do you think that's right? Do you think that the animals that have sacred value, like the cat, let's say, or the dog, do you think they need to have that to be able to have enough moral consideration for us to then say, okay, they have moral consideration, therefore we shouldn't stab them to consume their flesh?
Well, it's the relationship you have with them and the reason why they're in your house in the first place. Yes, I think you do have, if you have a particular connection with an animal, then there is that moral obligation not to kill them and eat them. I mean, I suppose if you want to take a pig or a cow, for example, I hear of stories where they keep these certain animals, but in a certain way, not for the slaughter. Lambs for the slaughter, as the saying goes. Like, you could keep a pig and you could look after the pig. It's like a micro pig, like Charlotte's Web.
Yeah, you could have them in sanctuaries instead of factory farms.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's the intent in which you wish to use them, to use a more objective term.
So do you, just ask that question again, do you think that all animals have moral value? Moral value means that they have value in terms of there is a right or a wrong way to treat them?
Well, all living beings have that,
Yeah.
but I think there's a different power dynamic when it comes to animals, because there are certain animals which are bred specifically to be eaten.
Yeah, that's true. Let me give you a different example then. Let's just say that some humans were bred to be eaten. Would it be okay to kill those humans because they're bred to be eaten?
Well, it depends who's eating. if you're
people that want
suggesting other people, then no, because that's cannibalism, which is
let's just say that it was legal and people did want to eat human flesh, and those humans were actually bred to be killed. That's the hypothetical.
Oh well, it's a huge hypothetical because if you say, let's say, eating humans is now legal, that's not the same. It's not like and like because it's still immoral to eat your own species, especially. Yeah.
Oh, immoral to eat your own species.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Let's say that the human species that are eating their own. Let's say that those humans that are consuming the. Let's think of another example. Hang on. So you're saying that it's the thing that's unethical is eating your own species?
Yes, because cannibalism is not. It's not. Well, it's not the thing to do.
Yeah.
Even cows eating other cows isn't a good thing. That's partly what caused bad cow disease.
So let's just say that we live in a world now where it's fine, it's acceptable. There's certain types of humans that we can consume. Let's just say that it's good for us. And in that world, do you think
and it's culturally acceptable?
Culturally acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah. In that world, is it ethical to eat the humans?
Well, now when you talk about a huge hypothetical, this becomes hard because what if? But I suppose if that were to happen, there would have to be a power relation of different kinds of humans, higher up humans, lower down humans. It's hard to say really, but no, I mean, as it stands, I cannot envisage a world where you can eat your own species. And
well, let's just say that there is that world now. Yeah. Imagine that in this world you're able to consume your own species and it's perfectly legal and acceptable, and people pay for it because they like the flavour, they like the taste, and they're bred to be killed, so it's okay. So in that world where those humans are bred to be killed and it's culturally acceptable and it's legal, does it become ethical to consume their flesh because they're bred to be killed?
Well, that is, again, a huge hypothetical, which I can only give a hypothetical answer. And I suppose if specific humans were made to be eaten and everything else was okay, then I suppose in some ways they would be a similar theory to eating other animals like pigs or cows. However, the idea that cannibalism will ever become okay is too far-fetched to really imagine.
Okay, so wait. So back up a little bit there.
Yeah.
So are you agreeing then in that world where those humans are bred to be killed, would it be ethical to consume their flesh? Kill them, stun them in the head, and then slice their throats and then consume their flesh? Would that be ethical because they're bred to be killed?
Maybe. I mean,
so maybe
you're asking. It's hard to answer such a. I keep giving you a repetitive answer, but only because it's such a mad concept that you can't really. I can't envisage, and I see your tactic of trying to take this argument into a world where it's trying to confuse me.
I'm just trying to establish whether you think that being bred to be killed per se is an ethical argument towards doing something. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well, yeah, if a being's purpose is being bred to be eaten, then
does that therefore make it ethical?
I think so. Yes, by the laws and standards of our world, then yes.
Say, for instance, there was an alien species that came down to Earth, and they wanted to breed humans. They wanted to take them up to planet Zoing, and they wanted to just breed them to be able to consume their flesh because they thought they were tasty. They think that humans are tasty. Does that now become ethical because the aliens want to breed us to eat us?
Well, this is where it's becoming difficult because we're taking this debate which is realistic and we're comparing it to two debates which aren't very realistic, like the idea...
Oh, you mean the hypothetical?
Yeah, the hypothetical, because they're not really. I mean, the idea that with one day... an idea that we could consume other human beings or that aliens can consume us are very, very, well, they're unrealistic as opposed to consuming.
And that's why we use a hypothetical. We use a hypothetical to be able to expose whether there's any inconsistencies in our ethical framework. So that's why we use hypotheticals to see whether that is the case.
Hypotheticals only really work well if you use realistic examples.
No, because there's hypotheticals, you could use any example really, just to expose whether there is an inconsistency in your own frameworks. That's why we use hypotheticals.
But the example
in philosophy.
I think the examples are so inconsistent anyway, that's the problem.
How are they inconsistent?
Well, they're just not compatible with a realistic concept.
But why does it have to be a realistic concept?
Because it's the argument that we can only really tangibly think about and have views on it because we know about it, and it's a physical possibility, not a physical impossibility.
Can you imagine an alien species coming down to Earth?
No.
Can you not imagine that?
Well, unless
Is it impossible to imagine?
Yeah. Well, yes. It is compared. Well, yes.
Is it coherent though to imagine that, rather than being incoherent?
Well, you can imagine anything.
You can't imagine like a blue as a chair, for example. That would be incoherent, right?
What is a chair?
For example, you can't imagine the colour blue is a chair because that would be an incoherent thing to imagine.
Yeah.
Whereas imagining aliens coming down from the sky, I think that's a coherent thing to be able to imagine.
Oh well,
do you agree?
There's imagining coherently, and there's imagining what's realistic and then what's possible. I mean, if you want to talk philosophy, we can talk the kings and cabbages, but at the end of the day, an argument like this, you can only give to it real hypotheses and hypotheses that work within our framework of thinking.
Yeah, so I think within our framework of thinking, it's quite possible to imagine aliens coming down from the sky, kidnapping humans, and then harvesting them on Planet Zoing,
Does that even
breeding them
exist?
to be killed.
Well,
because they like the flavour.
But it's aliens, isn't it? I mean,
So just to go back to the question.
Yeah.
If that were the case, right? If that did happen, I'm not saying it's gonna, I'm not saying it's realistic, but if that was the case, where they came down to Earth and they took some humans and then they took them back up to the planet where they came from, and then they artificially inseminated those humans to be able to breed them to be killed. Would you think that would be ethical? Because they're bred to be killed.
And like going back to the question, I wasn't diverging too much, but because the ideas are not as compatible with each other. But to try and answer your question to the best of my ability, if these hypothetical aliens came and they started eating humans, I mean, it's all about the codes and conventions of a society and how they react to. I mean, we certainly wouldn't like it because we're capable of sentient. Well, what's the word? Because I know it's not sentient because cows.
Sapiens?
Yeah, because I mean we're capable of. We're intelligent in our thought process.
Let's table that. Let's come back to sapience and intelligence in a minute. Just go back to my question.
Yeah.
I think you kind of answered this, but I just want to get a full concession.
Yeah.
Do you think the aliens breeding humans to be killed, would that be ethical because the very nature that they are bred to be killed? I think you said yes, but
ethical by whose standards? Our standards or the aliens?
The standard is bred to be killed is okay.
But by whose stand? If it's by our standards, then we'd obviously say no, it's not. But what's to say that this alien species, however, have completely different codes and conventions?
By your standards, because you're a moral agent, right? You understand what's right or wrong, yeah? So, by your standards as a moral agent, would you think that'd be ethical?
For aliens to eat me?
For aliens to breed you to be consumed, bred to be killed?
Well, I certainly wouldn't like it. I mean, that's the...
Yeah, you wouldn't like it, but the question is, would it be ethical?
Well, it wouldn't be ethical to me as a human being, no.
I'd agree with you, yeah.
But ethics is, ethics is obviously a human thought. It's what we have associated. Everything ethical has been created by us, human beings.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's to say, what about the ethics of those aliens? We don't know what the ethics of those aliens are. And I mean, it sounds like I keep diverging from your question, but it's because the questions you're putting are quite mad concepts compared to the question that we're debating.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get you to see it from their point of view, I guess. Because if it was happening to us instead of them, I don't think you'd think it would be morally acceptable. Even though, maybe they think, like the aliens might think in their own kind of moral system, that it's perfectly fine. I mean, I'm asking you, you're a moral agent, and I think by the sounds of things, you're a good person,
Yeah, I do.
So yeah.
So are you saying that maybe cows might have their own ethics of what is right and wrong?
I'm not really sure they do, because I'm not really sure they are moral agents like human beings are. And
Well,
I think,
they don't have the same thought processes as human beings do.
so just to be clear, bred to be killed, do you think that's ethical or not? Yes or no?
Bred to be...
As a concept.
Yes. Well, if I was to go yes or no, yes is the short answer. But then it requires...
Yes, it is ethical?
Yes, if an animal is bred to be killed, you can eat it.
Okay. So in the alien context, if that was the case, that we were being bred to be killed for the aliens, would that be ethical? Would it be ethical for them to do that to us?
And then I have to go back to the question again, by whose standards? Like
Our standards.
by our well, of course, by our standards.
Yeah.
If we were being eaten, we wouldn't like it. But
Yeah, and it wouldn't be ethical, right?
no, I suppose. I suppose not. But I mean, does this perhaps say something about ethics itself? Whether ethics are fluid?
Well, it says that, if it's not ethical, we shouldn't do it.
Who created ethics?
Who created what, sorry?
Who created ethics?
Us, human beings, as moral agents.
As moral agents, yes, but based upon what we think is right and wrong. So, society may prove to evolve and come up with a different right or wrong. What I can say about this idea of not eating animals is that I'm trying, like a lot of meat eaters I know are sort of taking the mick out of it, but I'm trying not to. If you look back at the civil rights movement, they all thought it was ridiculous at the time.
This is very true, yeah.
Exactly.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, it's interesting what you said about we created ethics as human beings, because before you were saying you don't think it'll be ethical for the aliens to, breed us to be killed, right? So that to me suggests that you are pro-human rights. You think that human rights are important. Humans shouldn't be murdered, raped, exploited. At the very least, would you agree with that?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
In terms of aliens, though, that brings in a whole new perspective.
Okay, does the aliens' perspective matter in terms of our ethics?
It's not really.
If they have other options, say like they can eat anything else apart from us, but they choose to do so because they like the flavour of us. But they can choose anything else to eat. Like they can eat plants as well.
No, because eating plants makes you depressed.
Okay. We can come back to that, but in terms of ethics, though, this isn't like we're having an ethical discussion. You don't agree that would be ethical? It would be going against human rights for the aliens to be using us in that way, right?
But the idea of human rights created by the UN? It didn't have alien rights. It didn't bear in mind the alien perspective. So when we talk about human rights, that's with the assumption that human beings are the centre of the world, the centre of the rules that govern the world.
Yeah.
When you bring aliens into that, that's going to then I suppose that's when those ethics get questioned.
Well, I mean, do we have to have a separate discussion about where ethics come from, or can we just bootstrap, from the fact that we already agree with human rights, and we don't want to go against that? We don't. I'm not anti-human rights. Like,
No.
Can we bootstrap from there animal rights? Because unless you could, well, let me ask you this question, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think that we should have a moral framework? Any kind of moral framework?
Well, it depends what I'm trying to do here. If I'm trying to convince you, or am I sharing my honest opinion?
Well, in your honest opinion, do you think that we should have morals in society? Do you think that we should have? Can we say that things are right and wrong?
Without a society, naturally society creates morals, so it goes hand in hand, really.
So do you agree that we should have a moral system at all? Yeah. And do you think that in that moral system, things should be consistent with one another in that system? As in,
Yeah.
no logical contradictions within it?
So, if I was to say yes, then you'd probably say, well, what about animal rights?
Well, I want you to be honest with me. I mean, do you think that within a moral system, there shouldn't be any logical contradictions within that system? Or not?
In theory, no, but I'm sure that in practice there's many, like anything, it's not as straightforward as
Okay.
you can just...
So in principle, do you think that within the moral system, everything should be consistent with one another in principle? Like there shouldn't be any logical contradictions within that system? In principle?
I'd love to say yes, but yes, I do think that, but I don't know if that is the truth.
And do you think that the reason why those concepts and ideas should be consistent with one another and shouldn't contain any logical contradictions is because if one thing is inconsistent with another, that literally means the whole system falls down and we can literally justify anything at that point if we contradict
And we have a
anything within that
postmodern
system.
world.
Do you agree with that idea?
What, that without morals, we're nothing.
Well, if within that moral system, that moral framework, the ideas aren't consistent with one another, meaning there are logical contradictions within that system,
But there'll always
then
be...
in principle,
Yeah.
if there are contradictions within that framework, then we could logically justify anything. Because we could say, okay, well, this isn't consistent, therefore,
Yeah.
like I think that we shouldn't rape, but there again, I think we should rape. Inconsistent.
I know. Well,
See what I'm saying?
funnily, this is a debate I have with myself a lot about. There's rights and wrongs, but actually, what makes those rights and wrongs? I mean, I think it's a pretty standard held thought that rape is bad, murder is bad, fascism is bad, but then there is, like, answering your question does become difficult because I think individuals morals can be fluid, like individuals have their own certain morals that are distinct from one another. Although we may agree on the idea that murder's bad, rape is bad, etc., you may strongly hold on to one moral and I might throw that moral out the window. So yeah, I mean, you're explaining about, what if there's contradictions? Does that just stop? Well, I think no, because morals aren't fixed.
Well, then, have you heard of the principle of explosion?
Probably, but
Yeah. So within
I
that,
can't-
within a system, if there is logical contradictions within that system, then you could say that, like, literally, you could literally justify anything. Because there are
yeah.
contradictions, yeah.
I mean,
So
yes, in theory.
Yeah.
It's all about theory we're discussing now.
Yeah. So within that theory, within that system, do you agree that the system should be consistent with within that framework. Otherwise, the whole idea the whole framework collapses. It just explodes.
As someone who likes to see things as they are, I'd say yes, but whether that's the truth or not is another matter.
Yeah, whether it's in reality is a separate issue. That's kind of like a description of what is happening now.
Yeah.
But when we talk about principles, that's separate from the pragmatic argument, right? So what's actually going on now, that's kind of like a description of what's going on. But in principle, that's where we prescribe what should happen, right? So the two are very different. Yeah, so in principle, rather than pragmatics, in principle, do you think that moral systems should be consistent? In principle?
In principle, yes. Yeah.
And so another question I'd like to ask you. I know this is going on for a long time. I can see that you're enjoying it. So
I'm loving it. I love it.
I'm enjoying talking to you. So the third question is, okay, that's the case. If you think that we should have a moral system, and within that moral system it should be consistent.
Yeah.
The third question is, do you think it's okay? Do you think it would be okay to kill humans for hamburgers?
Wow. Well, I mean, straightforwardly, if you had principles, I mean, what, other humans kill for hamburgers? Well,
just because people like the flavour.
Well, I assume one of your principles is, as well as murder being bad, is that cannibalism is bad too.
So you think that humans should be killed for hamburgers?
What? No. I said the opposite.
Okay, yeah.
Well, because
so
that's cannibalism. That's one of the agreed world principles which is bad. Like, I don't think there's a country that legalises cannibalism.
In a world where it's legal, it's like we discussed earlier, if that was the case, do you think they should be killed for hamburgers?
This is when philosophy becomes so murky and so liquid. It's like...
Okay, we can just create a world where it's perfectly acceptable to cannibalism thing. Yeah.
Pink might as well be green, and the walls might as well be on the ceiling,
or we could
Jamaica might as well be African, I don't know.
Yeah, and like the aliens could come down and eat us, so that could be one reason why we're humans are hamburgers.
Aliens exist, let alone do whatever they want to.
I mean, and then earlier on you said that you don't think that it would be ethical for the aliens to do that to us, so...
Sorry, but...
Earlier on you were saying that you don't think it would be ethical for the aliens to use us in that way, or kill us for hamburgers, right?
By human ethics, no, I wouldn't say so, but what's to say... well, chances are if we find aliens, they'll probably be more sophisticated than us, and they'll have their own ethics system.
So, in general terms and broad terms, do you think it would be ethical? Do you think it's okay to kill the humans for hamburgers in any kind of context?
Well, no, I'd like to say, but I feel in our philosophical arguments that there could be exceptions to that.
There could be exceptions to every rule, right?
Exactly, that's the thing. Yeah.
But because like survival, for instance, could be something. If we had to eat humans for survival.
Yeah.
But we're talking, in Norwich, if it was perfectly fine, acceptable, and there's loads of other options out there to eat, right, apart from the human hamburgers.
Yeah.
Would it become ethical to eat the human hamburgers because we want to?
What would have to happen to get to that stage, though? That's the thing. Like, where
you can imagine whatever you like. It's a really simple question. Like, do you think it would be okay to
it's obviously
kill humans for hamburgers?
Simple question because it sounds so simple that it must be complicated.
You don't have to overcomplicate it. Just
no. If we started eating humans in Norwich, then I can't see where that is ethical in any...
So it wouldn't be okay, right?
It wouldn't.
It would not be okay?
No, I don't. Yeah. No, I would hope you'd agree with that.
I agree with you too, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so the fourth question, and I'm going to assume your answer here, but I'll let you speak for yourself. Okay. Do you think it's... I assume that you think that it's okay to kill animals to consume their hamburgers, right?
Well, I mean, like, depending on whether I'm trying to convince you of the question or whether I'm sharing my view, I mean, I would have always said, coming from a conservative, grown-up background, semi-religious, in that animals are the gift of God to humans, and that's just the natural way. But
so it's just a simple question, and it just the very general terms and broad terms. Do you think it's okay to kill animals to make them into hamburgers and then consume them? Yes or no?
Well, at the moment, yes. Maybe that might change in 50 years' time.
Okay, so you think that we should have a moral system in place? You think, in principle, that should be consistent, right?
Yeah.
You don't think it's okay to kill humans for hamburgers, but you do think it's okay to kill animals for hamburgers, right? So the question then becomes, what is true about animals, right? Which, if it was true for humans, would justify the difference in treatment, i.e. killing them for hamburgers. So what would be true of animals, which is true of humans, would justify killing humans for hamburgers?
It's the thing, isn't it? I suppose it's just like, to get to the root of your question, it's the way it is, and it is based on how naturally we've grown up with these cattle around us and fought to use them in our means of production. But I think that I think this is becoming subject to review now, because when I hear, like, I've heard it from you and others, such an intelligent argument to not eat meat, I'm starting to question my own values, because actually...
Well, these are hard questions, so yeah.
They are, yeah, because really, although I am debating this, I don't think... I would say yours, so... I don't think that, like, the debate for eating meat sounds strong anymore. I think it's always been based on the way it is.
So let's just keep on track a little bit. So so you said that the thing that is true of animals, which if true of the humans to justify the same difference in treatment, is that it's the way that it is, right? It's just the way that it is, yeah.